After the election, the Supreme Court will hear arguments on whether the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, whether it's constitutional. With the high court now split with a 6-3 conservative majority, there's talk that the ACA will be overturned. So how would this impact you? Our Bruce Johnson talked with a financial expert for the answer, and here's part of their conversation.
My first question, according to the Urban Institute, nearly 20 million Americans would immediately lose their health coverage if the ACA is overturned. You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually just the start of the impact. We've got probably half the adult population under 65 has some sort of pre-existing condition. So if insurers can use pre-existing conditions again to exclude you or to charge you more, there could be a lot more than 20 million people losing their insurance.
Yeah, what are some of the other potential consequences here?
Well, it's really all over the map because the Affordable Care Act was huge. It had effects all through health insurance. So just as for instance, Medicare beneficiaries, if you have Medicare, you could wind up paying more monthly premiums because the Affordable Care Act pushed down the cost to providers. So that's one of the fallouts. Something as simple as birth control, that's usually covered under insurance now. It didn't used to be. So really, it's going to have an impact on nearly every person in America if the Affordable Care Act is struck down.
Opponents argue that Americans are paying higher insurance premiums because of the ACA. Why is this? And would repealing Obamacare bring those premiums back down?
I can't imagine a world in which without the ACA, premiums would go down. I think a lot of people could wind up paying more. The problem is that our healthcare system is broken. Either way, even with ACA, so people are paying more and more and more. I personally think we probably would be paying even more now if the ACA hadn't been in place.
Several taxes were passed into law to help pay for the ACA. That includes taxes on medical devices and pharmaceutical sales. Taxes were also raised for people with high incomes. Is it fair to make these entities foot the bill for Obamacare?
It's definitely true that if you are a Medicare beneficiary, that you could wind up paying more, but also it could be that if you are a higher income Medicare beneficiary, your payments could go down because right now you have something called IRMA, which means you're paying a little bit more or a lot more if you're a higher income person. As we know, Medicare is scheduled to not run out of money, but there's going to be a point at which the income that's coming in is not covering the benefits going out. And if ACA goes away, it looks like that day is going to come sooner.
You know, a lot of people who are pro-Obamacare, they say that if the Democrats win the Senate, win the White House, they've already got the House, and the Supreme Court does strike this legislation down, they can just merely reinstate it and fix it up, shore it up, close those gaps that Obamacare already has. Does that make sense?
It's a possibility that the Democrats could come up with something that would survive a constitutional challenge if this does not. The problem is that there needs to be a lot of political will for that to happen. And we haven't seen that in recent years. It was kind of extraordinary that this healthcare bill got passed in the first place. So counting on that to happen again, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see that.
Okay, Liz, thanks a lot. Good information.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Though the court has a conservative majority, it's still not clear how the justices will vote on this issue. Now, even if the court rules that the individual mandate is unconstitutional, the justices still have to decide after that whether that dooms the entire law or whether the rest of it can be left intact.